I'm excited to introduce you to our next and last panel for today, the importance of building the perfect user experience. Please welcome on stage Ankit Shah, Global Head of FinTech at GTN, who will now introduce his panel. Let's give them a warm welcome.
So thank you everybody for attending today's session. Just wanted to give a quick introduction to everybody over here. Gaurav is from Crystal. He is the Chief Growth Officer, been with the firm for a couple of months, and he's got a lot of experience working for some large FMCGs in the past 20 plus years. Next to him is Andres. He heads business development for Currency. And then we've got Darshan, who's looking after all the technology improvements for Century Financial. So, and just to give you a quick background about myself, my name is Ankit. I basically head the FinTech arm for GTM. And today's session, we're going to be discussing building a perfect user experience. So, one of the key points that I think we're going to try to cover in today's session is there really a perfect user experience, right? And how do we get there? How do we achieve this? So I want to start with my first question, which I think is important to cover for everyone over here. Why is it important to give the customer the right user experience, right? What really happens when you're building your own front-end app or you're building something for the user? Why do you want to give that customer the right user experience? So Gaurav, maybe if you can start telling us a little bit about what your experience has been.
So I think the right user experience is something that one first keeps evolving. It's right at the moment. Customer needs change, and I think as a product, we need to be 2 steps ahead of the customer in terms of anticipating what his or her needs are, and therefore tweaking the user experience accordingly. Second, I think people are in a hurry. They come into a product with an objective, mostly. There are the surfers, and if they come to surf, then that's the objective. How do you get them, how do you service the objective is what the user experience in my mind defines. So the sharper the journey, the stronger the feedback mechanism, and the more in the app ecosystem that you would keep let's say a potential customer or a prospect, the higher the chances of the customer being satisfied and coming back to you again. That's the way I look at it.
And out of your experience, I mean, with the user experience, do you think that it is important in terms of conversions of actual business, right? So if a individual is signing up on an app, one of the key things that need to happen is the person must actually convert to an account.
100%. Of course, conversion is the most critical variable that anybody who makes a product would look at. But I think it's just not the end conversion. What one must map out is across the funnel, what are the relevant stages? How do you track the conversion across each of the stages, and what is the traceability that you have of each user ideally? In a Nirvana world, what would be the traceability of each user that enters your app? And then obviously, the shorter the funnel, the more precise the funnel, the easier it is to track. So one of the things that I have experienced is we recently in our product, Ankit, shortened the journey, and this is like very recent. And with the same traffic, with the same marketing input, suddenly our numbers doubled and tripled in terms of funnel conversions because we just made it simpler. And I think one thing most people, at least we underestimated, is the need to see what may be termed as a live funnel track. So who's where in the journey, and then triggering messaging, triggering input, triggering alerts, just to close that step. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Gaurav. So Andreas, I wanted to ask you, with currency, as I understand, you're building a platform where you're going to tokenize digital assets. And when you get into that space, and this is obviously non-crypto assets and digital assets that can be traded, how are you going to deal with scalability and how are you going to get the right user experience in that? And so far, with whatever you've been building in your app, what's been your experience?
Yes, I think scalability is crucial for the right user experience, because as we have seen over the last couple of years, with the growth in the new users for the investment apps and investment brokers, a lot of service providers, they couldn't manage the increased influx of new clients, so they were lost deposits. There were pending onboarding items and things like that. So it was a bad client experience, and those clients turned into online communities to complain about it, and actually that impacted the overall kind of brand image of quite a few well-known apps and investment offerings. So for us, I think client support, I think from technological perspective, we believe our platform is scalable and we can ensure the client experience as we grow. But key element for us is the support element, the human touch across the client journey. So this is where we're really trying to define very optimized internal processes to make sure that we are able to provide human touch, very quick reply times to the client as we grow.
That's really interesting. So you're saying that in addition to the digital journey being perfect, you're also going to have some level or element of human touch to push the user experience to be better.
That's a great point, because we're building, our onboarding journey, we're building it from scratch. It's fully digital, but however, we realized with the pilot clients that in the initial feedback that still some human interaction still needs to be there, especially if you are dealing with a kind of early or newbie entrants to the investment world. They need some hand-holding, throughout the process. And once they're on board as well, to kind of help them not to lose the capital in the first week.
Absolutely, and I'm pretty sure that also leads to, having to have some level of education within the app, right? To educate the customer and give them that experience as they're getting onboarded, and what kind of product are they actually signing up for?
Without a question, yes.
Great. And Darshan, in your experience, if you are building an app and you've had quite a lot of experience in the tech space, you've done a lot of architectural work to build apps, etc. So can you tell me what is important in terms of building the right user experience in terms of the usability of the app?
I think user experience is everything in this today's world. Like, that's the reason which you will take and tell your friends about the app, or go to YouTube and say that this is a crap app, right? And it ties so many things in an organization in the app, in the user experience, ties so many things. It ties in the marketing, it ties in sales, it ties in support, even compliance and, the security as well. So many aspects of the service are coming together in an app. Of course, it needs to be usable, needs to look really good and fresh and everything. I mean, I have a stat saying that, people look at an app for 7 seconds and decide whether they want to use it or not. So that's the look and feel is way important in today's world. Of course, it should feature, the features and functionality are very important, and all of us work towards, all three of us have worked towards that. Making sure trades are possible in fewest clicks. Possibly that is one area we've worked. Also, compliance and security is also such an important aspect. That kind of makes sure that people trust it even further. All right. Accessibility. Now, we all know in last few months what happened in terms of when an app was not available on the App Store, right? So that's a touch point. The accessibility of the app is required, definitely. And to tie it all back again is the support, which happens during the onboarding, after onboarding, all of it.
That's really interesting because, recently I read an article without taking specific names where there was an analysis done, all right, on how fast when you open certain banking apps and certain neo or challenger banking apps, how quickly they're able to load up the whole system, right, and log you in. Most of the challenger banking apps or the neobank apps are able to load up their customer in 3 to 4 seconds. And other banking apps are able to do this anywhere between 7 to 14 seconds. Now, can you imagine 3 to 4 seconds extra actually makes that much of a difference on signing up many, many more people? So, I mean, in terms of usability, I think that's also important as well, right? How quickly can you get your client into the system and load up the app as well? So, the next point I want to discuss is there such a thing as a perfect user experience, right? And I think it's a very difficult topic to really answer because I believe it would be, different for different industries and different areas. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. Maybe Andres, we can start with you. If you can tell us about your past and current experience in building end user experiences of apps, etc.
Yes, I think there's a right user experience for the right client segment. And I want to continue what Gaurav mentioned already about the evolution of the client. So when you have a new entrant to the investment world, they usually select some basic app that it has basic features, easy to understand interface, active client support, a lot of education materials. So I think there the user experience is focused on simplicity, smooth interfaces, fast onboarding, right? And then the key thing there is to have to ensure that the clients don't lose the money essentially while using the app, because I've seen in a lot of cases in the market where brokers, sales teams, they push to get AUMs onboarded, and then client support and client experience stops there once they get the account funded. And then once the client grows, his demands are growing as well, and then this is where, if he becomes an active professional trader, then they move to the different platforms where demands are growing as well. The different, demands for, transaction reporting, understanding fee structures, advanced charting tools, and things like that. So again, the client experience needs to be totally different there from the, the user that just starting the journey into investment world.
Right. So I mean, basically, what you're saying is that if it's a millennial, right,
Yep.
that's signing up and they're just starting investing, considering our area of the industry, the user experience is extremely important for it to be super sleek, simple, straightforward, get in and be able to transact. But for people as they mature and become more professional traders, or as they build their wealth, then they would want to graduate to slightly more advanced apps, basically.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I think one additional element to add is that another important factor to ensure the perfect client experience is to really follow what happens in the broader ecosystem of the investment world. Follow the online channels, things like Twitter, Reddit, and online communities. Because these days the traders, they want to be connected, they want to share the information, share the insights, their decision-making process. So I think as a brand, to ensure great client experience, you also have to follow what's happening in these environments.
Absolutely. I mean, Gaurav, moving to you, I know that from Crystal's point of view, and in your experience, I've seen that app kind of change its journey over the last 4 to 5 years. I've been looking at it. I'm a customer as well. I would want to ask you a simple question, right? How have you guys changed your digital journey, right, for the app? And in your experience, what was your biggest learning curve over that period of time? Because, going from maybe a couple of hundred users, and I don't know, today, I think you guys are at maybe 30, 40,000 users or so. How's your journey been? What have you guys changed? Where did you learn?
So look, over the years, what we've realized is that you need a consistent feedback loop, because irrespective of what your user experience is, how good or bad you may think it is, there is a certain amount of adaptation that a client actually does, especially in my industry. So there are two things that we've now systemized in Crystal, and it's relatively, let's say, over the last couple of quarters. One, we monitor live and see from the time the person enters the system, whether on the app or on the website, till the time he exits. How is he moving? Is he spending 2 seconds, 5 seconds on each launch card? Is he spending 2 seconds, 5 seconds, maybe a minute on a certain product? Or is he just skipping, going to portfolio? There were certain insights that came from it. And we reconfigured our app along with the dominant insights for the cohorts that we could make. If you can't make a cohort, don't get into it. It's better not to disrupt and confuse rather than, let people just stay consistent. I think the second thing we did, and that genuinely was something laborious but interesting. So we went through a couple of thousand support tickets. And we actually went through it over a period of a week, ticket by ticket, and tried to classify it into some form and manner, Ankit. And then we started tweaking our content to answer this. So for example, if in the sign-up journey, you're still validating your email ID, or you're still validating your phone number, and your journey is not moving forward and you're raising a support ticket, when you reach out to us, can we just get back to you and say, I can see you're on the OTB page. Is there a struggle if there's a struggle on the OTB, please press yes, we'll get back to you. You understand my point? So that just cut shorts the time. I think the point that I would honestly want to underscore in this is that any feedback mechanism, any monitoring tool that allows you to help your client cut his time to get to what he wants is what constitutes as close to perfection in this. And obviously, I think my biggest learning has been setting up actually a tracking system where you see the funnel. How many people are coming in? How many people are actually raising tickets? The best person in my mind is the person who raises a ticket and fusses about your product. Because your most vocal critics are your biggest endorsers. The biggest worry is the person who comes in, goes away, and never talks to you again. You can never trace him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, giving the customer the opportunity to talk to you, it definitely makes a huge difference. Darshan, coming to you, I mean, from your perspective, do you think that a complete digital journey builds the perfect user experience? Do you think that a hybrid model is important? Just carrying on from Gaurav's point, where he's saying that it's important to have that human element for a touch point in terms of support. What's your view on that?
So at our organization, we've been in existence since 30 years. Has tech evolved over 30 years? Yes. What has been common in our organization that it's been a relationship manager model, where a person is there for every client, and it is one-to-many, and they're addressing each and everything, hand-holding the client through the journey. Whether it's onboarding, whether it's probably helping in trading, whether it's withdrawals, everything, right? So over these 30 years, over 100 nationalities, what we've learned is that people want to talk trading, want a human touch, they want a trusted advisor to be along their side to help them through the process. And I think that's worked really well for us. Is it perfect? At points. Even in the app business, I think in the digital journey, it's perfect at a particular point, and it kind of keeps evolving through the thing. Also, sometimes it works for certain set of categories. So someone who's not traded before will need that human touch. Someone who is a trading professional, they may not need and may not want to talk to us also, right? But they need our whole ecosystem to work perfectly well. So to answer the original question, whether is there a perfect user experience? Maybe not, and it's in points. And I think technology or digital experiences become an enabler for the whole RM-driven experience.
Right. I mean, basically, the way I look at it, right, and this is just kind of me trying to summarize that point, I would say that effectively, if you're building an app and you get, depending on your target audience, if you're looking at millennials, it comes back to the same point that yes, you do need to have good education on your app so that the person can understand what he's doing and how to actually get himself onboarded with you, right? And if you're dealing with advanced professional traders, etc., while it's easier for them to do the transaction, but sometimes onboarding can be difficult as well. So that hybrid journey is extremely important for you. Okay, that's nice. And in terms of the user experience in different sections within the fintech industry, right? So Gaurav, you're working with a wealth tech. Andres, you work for a trading app, right? And Darshan, you're basically working for a brokerage firm that's now in the process of building its own app as well. So, maybe we can start, Andres, with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, in terms of the investment app? How does it really differ from different types of apps that are built and out there today in terms of a wealth tech versus an invest tech versus maybe even a neobank, etc.?
I think for us, first thing we realized when kind of started building on our journey is that today's consumer, or today's investor is actually quite highly educated, has a lot of data, and knows quite a bit about the markets already, or comes to your app with some high expectations. So we were like, how we meet those? And I think the approach we took is the approach a lot of fintechs these days are taking. Rather than building everything from scratch, we actually started selecting best of the breed solutions in the market to build our kind of trading platform, so to say. So we have our core, our tokenization engine, our wallet, but a lot of other solutions we kind of partnering with the third parties. So this is one element that is important, and we're trying to differentiate in the market where we partnering, let's say, with the trading view for the charting tools, Trading Central for the technical analysis insights, for other partners for the tax reporting and things like that. Then another complexity is that our app is, we will be offering tokenized securities, right? We're starting with the listed tokenized securities. We'll be moving into private market assets, alternatives, structured investments, later on maybe even tokenized real estate. So the product, we kind of product agnostic, so to say, and then the key challenge for us is how do we ensure that client experience is unified within that, How do we ensure that the support services, they know how to support clients that come for this wide range of the products,
Yeah, I mean, that could be very interesting if you're able to build something where you can have real estate, investing, and like you mentioned, bonds and etc. within the same app. It could definitely be interesting, especially in terms of things like onboarding journeys and execution journeys, right? It's not going to be the same as just buying a listed product.
Exactly.
Right. Gaurav, if you can tell us a little bit about your experience as a wealth tech, for Crystal.
So, actually, what we do is what you just said. What we do is we open up a multitude of products and multitude of product classes. As of last count for Crystal, we had 13 different asset classes available on the platform. Now, what we do is we open it up. So the biggest challenge that came to us was, how do you give the whys and the why nots to a first-time investor in a certain product class? So if you go into a hedge fund, everybody's heard of hedge funds. Not sure how many of us have personally invested in a hedge fund. You understand my point? And the whys are always easy. Get good returns, historical track record, etc., etc., etc. The why nots are what are always important for the first-time investor. And then obviously they overcome the hesitation, etc. So I think wealth to that extent, Ankit, is a little different because it's a lot more considered. It's a lot more deliberated. People want to understand in detail irrespective of the money that they put in. But I think, to me, the whys and the why nots for the first time investor was the biggest challenge we had to solve for. And to be honest, it did take its own time.
That's definitely interesting. And Darshan, can you tell us a little bit more about, how you have, or how do you plan to move from a more RM hybrid-driven model to adding in the digital journey and creating that app which is going to drive the customer to be able to invest? And I remember we were speaking yesterday, and you were telling me about potentially having some sort of a app which is going to allow customers to kind of do different types of investments, like systematic investments, etc. If you can tell us a little bit about that journey.
I think from a, while as I said, earlier we were more of a RM-driven model, and it was easier to cater to a set of audiences. As we grow as an organization, we want to scale up to various other set of customer segments. And that's how, what we want to bring to that, that segment is the level of personalization which we could do with the RM model, the hand-holding which we could do with the RM model. So that's why we're implementing things such as, marketing automation, where we can personalize content related to for them. We can personalize what based on what they search for. All those kind of things are being implemented. Also, we're kind of transitioning into how do we help the RMs as well. Also, what we spoke about is the products are changing. So how do we cater to the millennials, where they would want to just start off with an investment product, which is a very simple product, and then graduate them to a complex product. So those are things which are in pipeline, and we are in a transformation phase as such.
That's also very interesting. So I think the next question is a little bit of a question where there's some controversial parts to it as well. But this really comes down to the point of regulators, right? How are regulators helping each of your apps or industries, or generally within the fintech industry, or not helping, right? So if maybe Darshan, if you'd like to start, you can tell us a little bit about what's been your experience. How have you guys, is there some sort of a central database where you're able to connect to pull data of customers and and do some sort of quick onboarding of customers?
So I think from a regulator, what the regulator generally defines is how do you go about onboarding it, or onboarding a customer, right? So that is something which you can say that is follow A, B, C, D steps, and you could onboard a customer. But what it probably does not define, and that helps in the user experience, is what do you do after the onboarding? How do you engage the user? I think Gaurav touched upon it. How do you engage the user with personalization? When do you send out, a demo account link versus a live account link? Or at what point do you send out a notification, an email, and etc.? So I think that gets defined and probably gets addressed with certain marketing automation tools. Another area which I think we're kind of addressing is with having these payment aggregators as a solution. It's very important to have, specifically in this region, to have a redundancy of payment service providers. So you could integrate 5 to 10 payment service providers with just one integration. So there are tools which are being used for that. From an onboarding standpoint, of course, we've implemented our EKYC solutions. I think it's become a standard across all applications, and you can't do without it anymore.
Absolutely. And, Andreas, if you could tell us a little bit about your experience in terms of, building out a wallet solution, which allows customers to plug in money into their account. Uh, what do you see in terms of, do regulators help you to do that? Are they supportive of it? And are there solutions available?
So taking a step back a little bit, I think we're big believers in open banking and open banking APIs. And I think we already have seen proliferation of the solutions in Europe with the PSD2 implementation and the opportunities that it opened up. I know that local regulators are looking into that space. I think currently in UAE, as far as I know, there's no kind of unified framework and standard for the open banking. But there are already entities that are kind of bilaterally already connecting with the banks or non-banking FIs and other entities through APIs and essentially creating those networks following their own kind of standards. So we identified account funding as one of the biggest pain points for the client conversion and for the onboarding. And that's why we partnered with a company called Lean Technologies to actually which is API provider for data aggregation and payment initiation to ensure very smooth funding of the accounts as soon as the account is, as soon as the client is onboarded. So they allow us to essentially, deposit the funds within a few seconds without the client needing to go to their bank, submit, filling the details for the, SWIFT payment or local currency payment. And that's within a few clicks, essentially, client can trigger the payment from his own UAE bank into our wallet.
That's also very interesting. Gaurav, if you can tell us a little bit about your experience also with the regulatory space. I know that, you guys have, or I think you might have had experience dealing with central databases also on a global scale, right? Because you guys have experience not just in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in India, various parts of the world.
Yeah. So I think overall, if I was to put it in one line, I'd say that they are enabling the ecosystem. What we do in Singapore, for example, is if you're a Singapore resident, so you're employed by a Singapore entity, you could go in, use the central registry, complete all regulatory asks, literally in 3 clicks, 5 minutes, and get a trade approval to fund your account. I think the point is, so if you're in India, a year back, you could probably not have used a CKYC registry from our system. Today you can. 6 months ago, most of these payment solutions, etc., that you're seeing over here today would not have been there. And so if you ask me, regulators are doing really strong and good work in terms of enabling the ecosystem. And because I'm saying a wallet or a paytech is a regulated service. So when they put healthy competition in that space, when they issue permits in that space, they don't compromise on the asks of the regulation. They just enable you to keep the person within your ecosystem, which is the biggest friction.
All right. And maybe I'll keep this as an open question for you guys, right? How do you choose your vendors, right? What are the key elements that you look for when you're choosing a vendor to build the right experience for your customer? Because at the end of the day, you're building an app. On the back of the app, you need to have connections into different vendors. What is it that you look for with vendors? Maybe Darshan, we can start with you.
So, of course, there are a lot of vendors which are working with to make sure their user experience is really good. I mean, at least 8 to 10 categories of vendors you're working with, right? But I think when you're selecting a vendor, one is the technology. Is it robust? Is it reliable? That is one important thing. Does the vendor have the experience or the recognition to do what you asked for? And is it responsive? Are they available for you whenever you need them? I think those are the 3 key aspects when I'm choosing a vendor.
Maybe Gaurav, or Andres, go ahead.
I mean, to add to that, a couple points from my side, what we're also looking at. One is the kind of openness of their technology and architecture so that we connect seamlessly. and then we can kind of grow together. And another one is more of a soft factor, is the alignment in terms of the work culture, in terms of the kind of the cadence that they work and that we work. Because we had vendors that came in with the working culture and the delivery timelines that maybe were not aligned to what we had. So I think that was an interesting lesson for us, because we are a very small organization with a very quick decision making, and therefore when we're selecting the vendor, we're trying to make sure that we kind of evolve at the same pace together when we work together.
That's interesting. And Gaurav, I actually have a question for you. Is scalability important when you're choosing your vendor, right? Or does it matter to you?
I would say it would be amongst the top 2 or 3 deciding factors, to be honest. Scalability, both from a tech perspective, as well as ensuring that the scalability happens, keeping information security intact. Because you don't want a situation where things go awry as you're scaling up. But yes, 100% scalability, and to some extent even support.
Interesting. So I've come to an end for today's panel discussion. Thank you all so much. But we wanted to ask if anybody has any questions, please put your hand up and we'll have a mic sent over to you. Perfect, great. We're exactly 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Question to anyone on the panel. How do you deal with, and I assume you've got presence in different locations or different markets. How do you adapt user experience to different personas in different markets, or is it really important?
So different. Your question is different personas or in different markets, right? Okay, so basically, if you're going into, let's say, Singapore, right, how would you change your user experience versus doing it in the Middle East or doing it in India?
I think a couple of factors. One is, of course, that the UI part, most importantly, must be locally relevant. The second would be that see, the work culture, the commercial culture in each region is highly contextual. So how do you adapt your user journeys to the cultural context of that geography? So without getting into specifics here, at geography X may only want to see portfolio. A geography Y may only want to see offerings. A geography Z may only want to see transactions as the first screen. You've got all 3, which one do you put up first? And obviously, as you go deeper, language becomes important.
I think, I've seen some apps where they were built in a specific jurisdiction, and they were in English. And, let's take an example of India as well. Language, to your point, the minute that app was also converted to be able to support Hindi as a language, the number of people that downloaded that app just started to jump up. There was all the information was available in the local language as well. So being able to support the app overall across regions that you kind of have customers from, and supporting the local language is actually super important. And me and Darshan had met yesterday, and this is actually one of the points that was discussed today. If you want to launch an app in India, for example, and support investing on international markets for the general public, having it in Hindi is a very, very important point. Does anybody else have anything to add on that?
What I would like to add to what your point is, I think regulation also matters when you're defining user experience. Now, what works in UAE may not work in Saudi or may not work in Singapore, and that's what the onboarding journey might be different. The personalization would be different as well, for sure.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right, great. Thank you all so much for attending the panel discussion today.
Thank you very much.